Hello and welcome to this update to the Eye Shader. This is now pretty much new and improved over the older shader Model 3. Even though these eyes were pretty good for the time, there was a few defects that I decided to fix, like the eye when it's like a slit moving and just a few other things that I wasn't too happy with. So I've went ahead and made a more improved shader here and made it look kind of nicer, nice caustic effect, and fixed the issue with the slit eye moving up and down too much. Improved the look of the cyber eye here, and these are all based off the same shader. So if you use this eyeball, basically you just use that instead of the eye that your character comes with. Everything's intact, the UVs are set up correctly, it's just one mesh, one shader and a few materials. So I'll go ahead and make an example. So I've got a demo material here, I'll just put it on this one. Okay, so first off you've got this red, green, blue mask that basically tells everything where the veins are going to go, where the iris is, and where this limbo ring is. Everything else is done through the shader there. So that's that. This is the iris pattern. So there's a few options here. You can load in your own ones. These are fairly old and due a new update as well, so I think I'll make a few more of these before updating. Colour tinting one is quite nice actually. You can change the colours of those quite easily as well. So you've got a base colour which is quite delicate, so it's important not to make that too bright, just keep that down the dark tones somewhere there, and let's go around the wheel, be more grey. And you can choose the amount as well, so how much to see of that texture. And this one is just the iris base colour. Okay, you can tint the eyeball colour just in case you want something completely different. You know, kind of a weird undead zombie eye. You've got the limbo ring colour, you can choose to change that as well. The alpha controls the amount. Let's make it yellow. If you want it to glow, there's the limbo ring emissive, so you can make it do a kind of fancy glowy effect. Maybe go for something that matches a little bit more. Yeah, kind of orangey tone. Doesn't have to glow completely. But that would show up in dark conditions. Like that. So it can be useful if you want something to show up at nighttime. So I'll just tone that down. Same for the caustic effect in darkness. So if it is dark, you can have this show up a little bit more. Let's bring the light background. It has a fake caustic effect, which is controlled with this image here. You can also choose what kind of image you want that to be. So there's a couple of ones you might want to try, and you can adjust that as well. If you change this tweak value or the caustic size, yeah, you can choose whereabouts that would sit. The tweak also has an effect. The power, affecting darkness, and the kind of initial rotation that you want it to have. 0 is default, and it just kind of works well enough. Let's change the color a little bit brighter like that. You've got control of the vein color as well. That's the eye vein amount. You can see I can make that brighter and change the amount that we see, so there might not be any veins at all, but it's good to have some. Maybe they are like undead purple veins or something. Okay, so all of that's been driven through this RGB mask, which I really like using. We've got the eye size, so to the left I'll make the eye bigger, the iris size to kind of match it. Obviously if you do that you have to change the caustic size, make these really big looking eyes. You have an iris pupil bond. Now what this does is it pairs the size of the iris with the size of the pupil. So if you change the pupil size, basically it's going to pull the iris with it, and that can be good for these big owl eyes. There's some parallax going on as well. You can see that the pupil does try to flatten off as much as it can. You can push that here with the parallax height. There's also the parallax mask and a fancy inverter which has a really weird warping effect. These are just things to sort of help play with the mask values, and you can really get some crazy effects if you experiment a bit there. I'll just bring that inverter back to a default-ish value. Let's see, we've got 0 or 1. We don't want to invert it, so I'll just do that and then bring the height down. Change that iris pupil bond back a bit, the iris size, and then I can do some parallax on the eye itself. You can use a little bit of the mask and the mask inverter or the iris pupil bond to fix some bits, but bear in mind the parallax effect will have a little bit of an effect in the limbo ring. You can play around with the limbo ring adjustment here to fix that. And because the eye is so big as well, so I'll just change the eye size to the right. It's a bit backwards, the eye size between 2 and whatnot, but it's fine, you get used to it after a while. Okay, so you got that whole parallax thing happening there. Okay, you also have the iris parallax power to help that kind of shift a little bit more as well. All these fancy parallax effects just to make your life a bit hellish. Why not? I mean, you guys are always asking for features, right? So there's plenty of them here. So let's just make the pupil size smaller. There's different things that will dilate the eyes, so the amount affected by light and the factor that they dilate by when the light hits them. So if the light was pointing directly at the eye, let's just increase the caustic effect and darkness a little bit and the caustic power, and we'll really see that. So as the light moves away from the eye, we get the pupil expanding, and as we go towards it, the pupil contracts, and we get this kind of fake caustic effect as well. Now I'm going to make a change to the limbo ring. I just want to see it a bit more like that. I don't mind that it has a little bit of a distortion on really get that somewhere. It looks good. Change the iris size down a bit, and the caustic size. Yeah, I just want to see a little bit of an edge there. That's looking better. And the pupil height, parallax height, and there a bit more. Let's increase the iris size a bit more so that it doesn't disappear at the edges. And that looks pretty cool. So that there's the caustic effect in darkness. So I just want to bring that right down. Don't really want to see that so much. And then the caustic power itself can be a bit brighter. You have to fine tune a few things to make them work. Sometimes it's the color. And sometimes it's the shader sliders there. Takes a little while to get used to it, but loads of control. So the dilate factor, you can see that the pupil bond there with the iris. As you move the pupil, that will change, but you just have to make sure the iris size is big enough to cope with that. You can also change the color of the pupil. So if you want some kind of weird cyber eye, and the sharpness, so you get it to be like soft. Usually keep it quite high. I think that works better. And then the overall pupil size. Now bear in mind as that dilates, that's going to get quite big, and it starts to tear into the side here because of the parallax effect. Yeah, it's just no way of getting rid of that. Anyway, really. But bear in mind, it's just one of those things that is to do with these and the pupil size. So while we're in darkness, we do want this to be quite big, so we can see it's affected by the light a lot, and the size is quite big. So as this comes round, we should get the dilation. So we'll do a bigger dilation factor and more affected by the light. They're kind of the same, but there's a bigger amount of motion. There we go, we can really see that working now. So I'll just put that back to black. Get this nice green looking eye. What else have we got? So we've covered a few things here. There's rotation for the iris. So if the game is in motion, that will basically rotate. That's what's used for the cyber eye here. Kind of looks like a drone. I usually have that off for the normal eyes, so you just put that to 0. There's all sorts of gloss control, lens gloss, and you can push the lens kind of forward and back. Just gives it a bit more of a bump, a bit of a rounded look. So maybe for the zombie, he's got less of a pushed lens and maybe a bit more kind of blurry like that. You can also change the limbo gloss. It's a very minute type thing, but you have that, and the eyeball gloss is contained in the alpha of the eye color, just to keep it tidy. Otherwise it'd be sliders everywhere. A couple of things you'll see where there's an A, it means the alpha channel is used to control whatever it says there. In this case, it's the amount of what you see. You can tone things back a bit. Let's make this a little bit more yellowish, like that, and maybe a bit darker. Okay. There's metalness as well. If you want something to look metallic, you can totally do that. Usually have these quite low for fleshy looking type stuff. So these are all your caustic ones. This is all your pupil ones. You can change the pupil to the slit by changing the width height ratio. So there's your vertical slit. Remember to change the size. Now the iris is moving because of this iris pupil bond, so just reduce that. And if you're not going to use that at all, maybe a tiny bit, just make sure you readjust the iris size. Okay, so we got the pupil size can now be a bit bigger, and change that width a bit more like that, a bit more to the right, and then this down, and that's you got that slit effect. And bear in mind that's going to move more with the light behind it, so just double check that it doesn't do too much. It just expands a little bit. It doesn't open right up what you would expect. You could always program that in for a nighttime scene for the eye to become a width height ratio of 1 again, and you could increase the pupil size and change the dilation factor. So you got your pupil sharpness again if you want that. I like it quite high. And let's see, so down to, we've looked at parallax, and we've got eye shading, which kind of adds these dark areas, and you might like them or not. It's up to you if you want to just darken around the eyes to give it a bit more shadow. We've got minimum glow is the minimum amount of brightness the eye is going to have. You can have that way high, but you don't need it way up there. It's just in case like you don't want your eyes to be so dark that they don't get seen. So that minimum glow is going to be the lowest brightness. This might actually be being fixed because really yeah, I guess it's a base tone, right? It's a base tone for everything. Everything else will be controlled through these SSS lights and the adjuster and the final illumination. In fact, that's quite a good setup for this one. So you see this kind of fake subsurface scatter as well is looking quite nice, and there's all sorts of control for that here. So you've got your final illumination, SSS desaturation, which basically tries to take the color out of any of the subsurface scatter, and you can add that in to just give it warmth. It's up to you how much you want. The mix SSS mixer kind of just changes that range there. The adjuster really kind of plays around with the incoming SSS used in the shader, so you can kind of fine tune that the way you want it. The light contact is where the light hits the eye, how bright you want that to be. The spread of the SSS, it can go like just a little bit or much further. And these two here are just like a small scale scattering effect. If I go a bit close to this, make sure I make the eyeball quite glossy so you can see it. Let's move the light round here. So you can see it's got a little bit of an effect there. So just change the scatter amount. And the scale, you can make that really small or really big. this just simulates like extra bumps and detail in the eye itself, and kind of works like a clear coat sort of thing. It's a bit of a hack, but it gives it a nice wetter look. Just be careful with the amount here. Usually just bring it down so you just have it a little bit, just to break up the noise. And it can be quite good on something like the Cyber Eye here. If I just choose that from the project. So we've got the Cyber Eye, and I can change the scale there and the amount. Get a nice metallic effect on top of the texture already underneath. I really like the Cyber Eye. It's ready to go for all sorts of menacing situations, and yeah, play around with the emissive power of the eye. You could imagine this being a kind of pulse. You could feed information into the shader. If you go to select shader, you'll see this is all the parameters that you can tap into through your renderer. Set floats. You want to get float so that you get the value, and then set so that you make some changes. There's a script here to show you how easy it is to change a parameter. This will be updated a bit more later, but it's a good way to get started. So you've got a few eyes to get started as well. There's the blue eye, there, hazel, green, cat's eye, brown eye, dragon eye, a kind of zombie eye, and the Cyber Eye, and a couple of extra ones like the demo one there, red black, which is more like just a kind of freaky brown eye right now. Let's change this so it looks more like a red black eye then. So make that dark. Let's make the veins. That's quite nice. We can also change the pupil to have a width. If we change the pupil width height ratio horizontal, like to the left, it's going to become like a horizontal eye. That's quite it's quite demonic. We make the eye size a bit bigger here, and let's change the image of this to maybe this one. Let's go back to the eye. It's actually called the zombie eye, but we're just making changes to the red black eye. Let's just select that one. Yeah, that looks a bit more interesting. We can also rotate it. In fact, this is actually a rotation animation. That does look quite sinister with that rotating. We could rotate it like a tiny bit. So minus 0.1. Let's change these colors up a bit more. Get a really hellish looking eye. Let's bring that down a bit there actually. Should we add a small bit of red here? Just a fraction, just to give it a cloudier look. The ring color, it doesn't really work. I like that black, just leave that there. Make sure the emissive power is down for the eye as well. Any adjustments? Gloss, and just leave that down a bit there as well. The eye size is quite big already. Let's play around with the caustic size. affecting darkness, so maybe make it glow a bit. So if it is dark, let's just get our directional light. We can just tone down the intensity to 0, and we can see, you can see how these have got some of that minimal glow there. In fact, the light does need to have a little bit of intensity in it, so I'm gonna fix that so that we don't get that issue. But yeah, you can see it's important to have a small amount of light and a directional light for the time being, but I'll fix the shader. Let's just do 0.5, let's just make it 1 so we get the normal light, and we just want to move this behind. You can see all the things that glow a little bit. Now this is I guess it's not an expensive shader, it's not doing too many tricks, it just gets light direction and does some things. There's quite a lot of instructions probably, but I still think it'll be fine to use for most games, for Universal Render Pipeline. Okay, so that's going to be our Devil Eye. Let's see, there's our Demo Eye, and we'll bring back our Zombie Eye. I think the Zombie Eye could look a little bit better. Let's make a little change to that. Quite like the purple. Maybe a bit more of a bluey purple like that there. And change the sharpness of the pupil. Darker. Bigger. Eye size. Let's choose the colorful one. Once you start bringing in your own images here, it'll be easier to make exactly what you want. The shaders were all made with Amplify shader, so oops, that is the eye vein. So if you've got that, you can make some tweaks, maybe learn some things from the code, from the shader graph. Let's make this a little bit more greeny as well. So there's the overall improvements. The shaders are a lot different internally. Don't expect things to just work if you were to change, for example, this shader for another. Let's just go to this blue eye here. I'm just going to duplicate Eye Shader 3 and apply it to this and go to the shader. Let's see, and change it for Eye Shader 4. You will see that it won't translate 1-to-1. So you can see it looks a lot different. It's because a lot of the internal workings have all changed. So it's important to use these prefabs or the materials as a starting point. But feel free to use whatever model you like. Eye Shader 3 is a lot less expensive, so if you're using a mobile game, that one's the one for you, and if you're doing a kind of PC game, then go for this one. So it all looks quite nice. Got the nice subsurface scattering there, which looks a lot nicer than these ones. The better caustic effect, the better iris control, pupil control, the emissive effect on the ring plus the finessing of that, a lot of rewiring of things to make sure it all works a little bit better than before. And I hope you enjoy using this. This will be released very soon. A couple of changes to make, but should be with you in the next few days. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.